So essentially what happened, what really kind of caused the current, sell-off, crash, if you will, was China basically came out and said, hey, we're not allowing any more transactions to happen via Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies in general. They did, however, say that you could still hold it, but that you could not make transactions with other businesses in China. And that's what really kind of sparked this crazy-ass sell-off. But, I mean, this has been coming down for the last several weeks. This just kind of was just another negative catalyst for Bitcoin. And it was almost as if, I would say, venture to say, probably institutional investors said, I've had enough.
How did you read the news about the cyber hacker group?
I briefly read about that, yeah.
Because both those news came out, I think,
right around the same time, yeah. I was more focused on the China news, but yeah, I did hear about that too.
So I'll try my best to explain it. So it turns out that what's the name of the group? DarkSide. So it's a cyber hacker group, and they basically were behind the Colonial pipeline,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they received, I think it was $5 million.
Yep, from Colonial.
But they've had these attacks on companies, and they've received over, when I say 5 million, worth of Bitcoin, I should be clear, it's worth of Bitcoin. So over the course of time, they've actually accounted for $90 million worth of Bitcoin in these ransom cases, and the government actually shut down their wallets. And at the time, they'd already pulled out money. By the time, I think they had about 5 million in there.
Yeah.
But they lost access to their servers, shut down their wallets. And I think that was interesting to me because of two things. One is everybody makes this whole argument about decentralization and essentially that crypto blockchain is sort of immune to what public markets have to deal with. That clearly showed that they're not.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I think there's been big concern around illegal activity in the black market as far as crypto is concerned. And I think that scares people. And that showed how bad it can get.
Right.
And so that was also a really interesting piece of information, and they both came out at the same time. So that was two knocks on crypto, Bitcoin specifically.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been one thing after another. Last week it was Elon, and then the week after that it was something else. It was just constant beatdowns on Bitcoin. And so, when you get to a point, though, when all of these crazy-ass shit coins and stuff like that are going off, and people are, I mean, we talked about yesterday about Portnoy getting into $40,000 worth of SafeMoon that hardly anybody can even have access to buy anyway. But it's just, it felt definitely like a bubble. It felt frothy. And so this correction was certainly needed. Now, where do we go from here? I think that Bitcoin's probably going to go up from here. I think there's still going to be some volatility, granted, but I think that there's definitely, I think the correction definitely came in. That 30% downturn over the last 2 days was pretty rough, and it seems to be bouncing and holding its bounce. It's not really rolling over at this point.
Well, the interesting thing about a correction is, this situation is a little bit different. Maybe it needed to cool off. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
But I think what this also exposed is the fragility of it. Because, somebody tweeted about, could you imagine if the dollar dropped 30% in one day?
Right.
And it was just no big deal. It was a setup for it to come back, but also it shows how when things don't go your way, and Tesla's a perfect example of the blue skies, everything's good, it's only going up. And then when things go the opposite direction, it can change on a dime.
Yeah.
And you can go from darling to nobody wants to touch you. And that's really where Tesla's in at the point. And it's ironic because Tesla's already been beat down, and the Bitcoin situation is hurting it even further because of their investment in Bitcoin and the situation with Elon. So it remains to be seen how that works out.
Yeah, and then the ironic thing is that Elon comes out this morning and says Tesla has diamond hands.